So, guys, what we are going to discuss in today's session. So, basically, we are going to discuss two important concepts. What are the important concepts? Now, how to unit test the controller and also how to unit test the repositories, right? So far, what we have discussed. So far, we have discussed the fundamental concept of unit testing. We learn what is the arrange act and assert pattern. What we exactly needs to do within arrange, what we need to do within act, and what it's all about assert. We have also discussed, right? If I'm going with the xUnit framework for implementing unit testing in .NET, then what is the use of a fact theory and inline attributes? We have also discussed what are different assertion method provided. What is a good testing naming, right unit test naming conventions, and what is the characteristics of a good unit test? So that is what we have already discussed. In part two, what we have discussed, we develop a real-time order management ASP.NET Core Web API application by following the layered architecture. So in that application, we created controllers, we created services, we created repositories, DTOs, we have implemented EF core, we have also implemented entity framework core, we have also discussed what is dependency injection. We follow the dependency injection pattern, and we have also created some custom exception classes. So this separation made each component easier to maintain and easier to test independently without depending on each other. And in part three, what we have discussed how to unit test the service layer. And in most of the time, when we implement unit testing in our real-time application, maximum time, 90% of time, we are going to unit test the service layer. Why? Now, this is the layer which actually contain our business logic. And while implementing the unit test layer, while implementing unit testing for the service layer, we replaced the actual repository and unit of work with a mock implementation so that we can test the business logic, validation logic independently within the service layer without depending on any kind of external dependencies. So now in this part, right, or in today's session, what we are going to discuss how to unit test the controller as well as how to unit test the repositories. Is that clear? Clear, guys?
Yes,
Okay. So what is controller unit testing?
yes,
See, controller unit testing means what? Now it is the process of testing ASP.NET Core controller independently. So when I'm saying independently, what exactly it means? It means without starting the ASP.NET Core web server, without sending any kind of a HTTP request, without using a actual database, without running the ASP.NET Core pipeline, how we can test the controller independently. So that is what we are going to learn in today's session. For example, for example, in normal way, right, how we are going to test, we need to make one HTTP request to this API endpoint, to test that method. So basically, instead of calling the endpoint using HTTP request, how we are going to execute? So we are going to execute it. It's just like a normal C# method. Normal C# method means what? We need to create an instance of the controller class. We need to call that a method. So if you go to the controller class, now if this is my controller class. So here we created orders controller. Forget about this, forget about everything. Practically, if you see, this is a class or not? This is one method or not? So if I want to
yes,
invoke a method of a class, if it is non-static, then what I need to do? I need to create an instance. Then if I want to execute this method, what I need? I need an instance of this controller orders class. And once I got the instance, then I need to create an order created DTO object, and I can invoke this method by passing that object. So now that is what we are going to do within the unit test method. So within the unit test method, how I can create an instance of this class, how I can invoke this method by passing this object. That is what we are going to learn. Clear?
Yes, sir.
yes,
So what are the things you need to test inside a controller? So you need to check whether a particular service is being called, whether you are returning the proper HTTP status code, whether how you are going to return, right? For example, if everything is fine, it should return 200 success. if exception, right, which exception should become not found, which exception should become bad request, which exception should cause internal server error. So all these things we need to, right, identify within a controller class. And you already know what is the responsibility of a controller class. If you know that whenever you send a request from the client, when a client make a request, whether the request coming from the browser or from mobile app or from other services, it is the controller who is going to handle that request. Controller will receive the HTTP request, and then controller will do all these things. So it receives the HTTP request, it parse and validate the rate incoming data, it call the appropriate service layer method, and it format and return the HTTP response based on the response it received from the service layer. And that response again it will receive by the client who initially made the request. So this is how the controller works. We have already discussed this thing. Now, what are the things you need to check within the controller? Whether the response completed successfully? Is there any client error? Client error means, guys, remember, client error means the issue is caused by the client, not by the server. For example, bad request. So you are sending a bad token, or you are providing the username and password which is not correct, or anything, any data you provided that data misses something, so not found, unauthorized, forbidden. So these are the issue which is going to be caused by the client request, not by the server. This 500, it is the server error. So 200 means two access means success. 201 okay, 201 created, 204 not found. And guys, remember this not found and this not found means what? You can consider 204 no content. Sorry, this is no content and this is not found. So what is the difference between these two? Can anybody tell me?
No content means the data is updated but without returning anything, but not found with the record does not exist in the database.
Two things. No content means request is a success. No content means request is a success. For example, you want to figure out how many pending orders are there in the database, but currently there are no pending orders. So in that case, it will return 204 no content. Not found means the client making a trying to access a endpoint which doesn't exist itself. That is not found, right? For example, if you try to access a particular page which doesn't exist at all, so in that case, it is going to return not found, resource not found. So if that resource is not available in the database, that is no content. And if right, if that endpoint itself not exist, that is not found. Are you getting my point? For example, you type a wrong URL. Then in that case, what error you generally got? You got 404 not found. Clear? Clear or not? Is that clear, guys?
Yes.
Right now. Now tell me, guys, what is the difference between unauthorized and forbidden? Sometimes in the interview, they might be asked you this question. Can you please elaborate what is the difference between unauthorized and forbidden 401 and 403?
Another is it doesn't have a proper identity for the access resource, and forbidden is that doesn't have a role to access the particular resource.
Yes. So unauthorized means user whatever the credential provided that is wrong. I mean that the credential itself wrong. So server is returning 401. Forbidden means what? The credential is correct. Whatever the username, password, or token you provided, that is absolutely correct. But whatever the resource you are trying to access, you don't have permission. So in that case, it will return 403. Server error means some internal exception occur, right? Suppose while executing the application code, some unhandled error is there. And in that case, you can return 504. Sorry, 500. Return detail, for example, whether the action method returning a proper uh, order response detail, error response detail, that's what you can also identify using right controller unit test. So these are some of the example now, right? We need to understand how to implement this is. So for example, First of all, what I need to do, I need to create a folder called controllers within my unit test class. So this is my services folder, within the unit test project. And inside this create a folder named not within the services, wrong place. So let me delete this one. Within the project, I need to add a folder. That folder name is going to be write controllers. So whatever unit test we are going to write for all the controller, this should kept inside a separate folder. Not mandatory, but a good programming practice. So within this folder, what I need to do, I need to create my controller class. So let me go ahead and create this one. Order controller test class. Okay. So that's fine. Now what I need to do, I need to add some of the namespaces to this class. Let me copy this one and then paste it here. So I first of all replace the class from internal to public. So you can see some namespaces I have added. This namespaces is required. Why? Because we are going to check, right? Okay, object result, created at action result, bad required object result. So this is what we need to use. So for example, if you go to this one, so here you can see I'm using action result, right? Sometimes he created at action. So for this purpose, I need to use that one. So this HTTP means status code constant. So basically within my application code, I'm going to use the status code constants to correctly identify what is the status code. This is for logging. This is for using the mock representation. This is for providing the unit testing rate method for creating. So now what I need to do now, first of all, as we are going to unit test the controller class, so does this controller class have any external dependencies? Can anybody tell me whether this controller class have any external dependencies? Yes or no?
Yes.
External
It can
external
have the
dependency
services.
means, external dependency means does it depend on other classes to perform its operation? Yes.
Yes,
What are the
services.
classes?
Services
Yeah.
are there.
One is iOrder service, or you can say order service. Another one is logger. So if I want to create an instance, then right, if I want to create an instance and call this method, then to this instance, definitely I need to pass two objects. One object of type order service, another object of type iLogger. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So this is the public constructor. And if I want to create an instance, then whatever the parameter the constructor expect, those arguments we need to pass. So first of all, what I need to do, I need to create some private variables. I need to create some private variables. So you can see what are the variables I created. I created one order service mock. Why I'm creating this order service mock? Because I want to create the mock in representation of this class as well as iLogger orders controller. Then you can see I have also created one variable for the order service mock, another variable right for the iLogger and the actual variable. So this is going to be my actual controller instance. So one variable to represent this instance, another mock representation of this variable, another mock representation of this variable. And when I call the object property, they will give me the mock object of a iOrder service and mock object of a iLogger order controller service. And using those dot object, I can initialize my controller, right? So now let us initialize the controller. So the same approach what we have already discussed in our last session, that what we need to follow. So order service mock, right? I created. Then logger mock I also created. So and then you can say I'm creating an instance of order controller. And to the instance, whatever the mock object I created, dot object mock logger mock dot object. So that actual object it will return, and that actual object is needed by this order control. Clear? So this is the mock representation where we can configure many things. And one of the thing that we will get is the object by calling this object property. Similarly, you can use setup. Similarly, you can use verify. All these things are there. And now we are just using this object property, which will return me the mock implementation of iOrder service. And this object, right on the logger mock, it will return me an implementation of iLogger order control. So once we have the order controller instance, now can I call this methods create order? and get order by ID? Yes, absolutely. How I can call this method? Let us try to observe. So first scenario, what we are going to discuss, success order creation. Now tell me, this is my order controller. So when the order created successfully, what status code it is going to return? Created at action. Created at action means what should be the status code it will return when the order created
201.
201. So what we need to test? So success order creation should return me 201. So now guys remember, while we are performing the unit testing, it should not have any dependency on actual service class. So when I'm calling this method, so this method will call this create order async. But at this point of time, the create order method, what we defined in our order service class, that should not be executed. So in the order service class, our implementation is done. We don't want to execute this implementation. Then what will happen? Now, when this order service create order async method is being invoked, at that time, it should return our mock representation of that method. So how we can do this thing? Let us try to observe. It's very interesting as well as very simple. First of all, we need to make the arrange. So as part of arrange, our controller is ready. So this controller creation is also part of arrange. Once the controller instance is ready, what is the next that what we need to make ready? Order created DTO. So now you can see this is my request object, customer ID, list of items I'm passing, product ID and the quantity. At this point of time, it doesn't matter whether you are passing the valid customer ID, valid product ID, valid quantity or not. So this doesn't matter at all. Why? Because we are not executing this of create order async method. Rather than what method to be executed, that what we need to define within our mock representation of this order service. So let us try to observe. So this is going to be my request object order created TTO. And now what I am going to do, now when the created at action method will return, it will return the order object, and that order object I'm preparing here. I'm assuming that the order is created successfully, and once the order is created successfully, you can see this is going to be my order response DTO. So that order response DTO I'm preparing, and this order response DTO will be written when this create order async method is being invoked on our mock object. So order response DTO, whatever the data you want to set, customer ID, order ID, name, email, whatever, order items, everything, whatever you want to set, you can set. These are just the mock data. Now, what I need to do next? Next, on the order service mock object, on the order service mock object, I need to set up. So what setup? Now, when the service, right, when the controller invoke the service class, create order async method by passing this request object. So this request object, it is going to return the create order, that is the response. That means at this point when it execute, so when this method is being invoked, so it is not going to execute the order service representation. Rather than at this point, we are injecting our mock order service object, and in the mock order service object, it is going to invoke this create order async method. And when this method is execute, it will return this create order. Clear till now? When this method is going to be invoked, how it is going to return the response without executing our actual service class? Is that clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now this act part is ready. We have made everything ready. So now we need to invoke the method. So this is controller action method, create order, right, controller class, create order method, passing the request object, and it is going to return the result. So now, so assert dot each type. So in this case, whatever the result type it is returning action result of a order response DTO. But that is fine. But what is the actual object we are returning? So this is a super class, and this is the actual child class object. So a parent class reference variable can hold the child class object reference. So in this case, the result is going to be created at action. If you go to the implementation or definition, you will see that a created at action is going to return one action result, right? What is that result type? Created at action result, right? This is the return type of this method. So that method means what? What I need to do? I need to check the same thing. Whatever the action result it return, that result property is going to represent the data type. Is that a data type of this type? Created at action result? If it is created at action result, that is fine. That test is going to be success. Then what I need to do from this created result, right? I need to figure out what is the status code. Is the status code 201? Then I need to check whatever the action name. Action name means what? You can see 201 always return a location header, which is going to identify how to access the generated resource. In this case, that action name is get order by ID. So is that action method name is get order by ID, and then created order and right here. So basically what I'm checking here, the response body contains the same object by the mocked service. So in this case, you can see this is the created order and this is the right value. Value means from this action result, you can access the value. So you have to remember. So this is the parent class return type, but what exactly it is returning? Created at action. So from the created at action, right, dot result means it is going to return the whatever the data you are returning, and that what we are returning here. And finally, we need to verify how many times this method is being invoked. Only once. So that's what you can verify here. Clear? Clear, guys? Is that clear? So this is the result property which is going to contain what is the data it return. And from that created result, you can verify the status code, you can verify the name, and this value is going to return the actual object. Clear? Clear? If you are getting confusion, go to the definition. Object value, the object result. So what are the data? It is written that what you can specify. This is going to be contain the action name in case of a 201. So this action name you will not find everywhere. If the return type is 201, then only you can get it. So now we need to test this endpoint, whether it is working fine or not. So right click here. Test like this. Run test. Controller. It is still running. Okay. You can see this is completed successfully. Clear? Anyone having any question related to this test method, whatever we have written?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, verify the route value contains the newly created order ID. So in this case, you can see this ID, it is part of your route data. So now we need to specify whatever the order ID generated, is that order ID content in the route or not. So very simple, let us write the code. We'll go faster, little faster. We are making the request object. This is the order response that what will return. We only going to verify this order ID, whether that is contained in the route data or not. So we are setting when the create order async method is being called, it is going to return this create order. Then we invoke the method. We expect the action result is going to be created at action result. We need to ensure the route value should not be null, and we also need to ensure the route value should contain one ID, and we also need to verify that the ID value is going to be whatever the order ID we set here. Clear? These three things clear? So this will check the route value. What is the difference between a query parameter and the route values? Can anybody tell me? Okay.
Query parameter means you have to specify it with a question mark. Route means you have to specify value user equal to name, some kind of thing.
Route value, yeah, exactly. Query parameter means this is additional information which is required by the action method that will become as part of a key value pair after the question mark. And the route value means it is part of the URL itself. These values are mandatory. Without the route value, your application, the action endpoint is never going to be executed. But query parameter means they are optional parameter. If you pass, that is fine. If you do not pass, then that is also fine. So in this case, the query parameter value should be there, right? And when the action is successfully created. The second test, we'll test all these things right at once. Next one, verify the exact request is passed to the service. So basically, whatever the request object we created, whether that request object is actually passed to the service class method or not, that's what we need to check. So if I'm getting this one, then this should be passed to the service class method. That's what we need to verify. So let us write one more unit test. So first of all, your data is, see guys, remember instead of creating, you can also create a separate private method and call that method which is going to return you the request object instead of creating again and again inside each method. That is also fine. So this is the created order. Here you can see order ID 100, customer ID, this one. So we just returning any sample response. Whatever the data you want to return, if you want, you can add. And here our main objective to check whether this object, whatever we are passing, whether that is actually being passed to the service class or not. See how we can do this thing. Now this is my create read order create detail captured request. So this is the read order create detail we created. This is the request we are passing, and this variable we created to capture the request object what is being passed to the service class. How we can do this thing by using the callback method. So now try to observe. So we are setting that when this create order method, this create order method can accept of any object. This create order method can accept of any object of which type create order credit. See, in earlier case, if you remember, we specify this request object only. Instead of this request object, I can also specify that this method can accept any object of this type order created detail, and that is what exactly I'm doing here. It it's a static class, and is any it's a which type of method? This is a generic method, and this method explicitly saying that this method can accept an object of which type order created detail type. Clear?
We can specify request object. No, sir, why you are specifying it as a mistake order? Not
Sorry,
required. We can
sorry.
specify request over here, no? Instead of we key guard is able.
Yes, because we want to test. We want to test whether this method is actually accepting this request object or something else. That's what
Okay.
we need to,
For testing purpose.
right? So if you specify request object, right, it will work. But right, what exactly it means? It is hard coded. But in this case, if the controller changing something and passing a different object, that's what it can identify,
For
right?
testing
And in
purpose.
that case, what we are going to do now, when this create order method is going to be executed, it is also right receiving whatever the input object it received, right? That object it is going to store inside this variable. Clear? Whatever the object it received, that object it is going to store inside this variable, and finally it is going to return this response. So here we are setting what object it will accept when this method, this is what it is going to return, and this is the method which is going to store that captured object inside this captured request variable. And now we need to call the controller class method. We need to check this captured result should not be null. So we have capturing the result, it should not be null. And we also need to verify same method is C. Equal method is for value type. Same is for reference type. This request object and this captured request both needs to be same instance. Equal also you can check right here. You can see one that customer ID, two the number of items. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So same is going to verify the reference type, not the value type. So missing customer. Now let us try to test this thing. So test explorer. Okay, let me test all the three endpoints of this controller, and all the three endpoints should succeed. Okay, fine. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a different object. And this is what I'm passing here. Clear? Now I need to test this endpoint. It should pass or fail. Why it is failed? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So this is the reason why we are testing. So means what? It is not expecting the same object. So okay, fine. Let me remove this one, and it should be this object. Next, what I need to do, I need to check missing customer or product returns 404. So that get by ID endpoint is also going to be there. So let us test the same. Now let us try to observe. So this is order create request. Okay, this is the same order create method. And here error message is this one, order service method. So basically what I need to check. Now when this order controller is always not going to return the success result. If the customer is not found, or if the product is not found, it is also returning not found exception. I mean that not the exception, this error response DTO it is returning. So that what I also need to test. If the customer is not found or order is not found, then what is our expected result? Guys, tell me. In this case, while I'm passing a order DTO, if the customer is not found, as well as if the product ID, whatever I'm passing, if it is also not found, then what exactly the controller is going to return?
Not found.
What exactly? It is going to return not found along with what is the data, error response DTO. Clear?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes. GT expression.
Now let us try to do the same. Let us create a test for the same. So this is my customer ID, product ID, and the quantity. This is error message, and I'm setting what I'm setting. Now when the create order method is being invoked, what exactly it is returning? It is returning not found exception. Here I'm setting customer with the ID was not found. You can set a product with the ID was not found. Whatever. Clear? Clear? And in this case, please observe I'm using it through async, not return async. Return async when success, through async when exception. And then I'm just creating my action method. I'm invoking the create order. And here I'm specifying that not found object result should return, status code should this one, data should be error response DTO, whatever the error message should verify, and this create order async method should invoke only once. Clear? Clear, guys? I don't know why you guys are being silent. So
Yes. Yes.
we participate. Otherwise, right, I will get bored. Okay. Let me write another unit test. What is that unit test? The unit test is for invalid request return 400 bad request. Invalid request. For example, in this case, please observe. So if I'm passing this as a null object, if I'm passing some invalid data, right? For example, I'm passing something like not here. If you go to the order service class, if I'm passing something interesting, right? I mean, some argument null exception. In that case, controller is returning me invalid bad request. So for example, I'm passing this null object. If passing that items null, counts null, or if I'm passing some red customer ID negative number, product ID negative number, in that case, my application is going to return me bad request. If insufficient stock also there, which is going to be written by the order service class, my controller is going to return me bad request. Bad request means the request contains, this is a client related error. The request contains invalid data, and that is the reason why controller or a service class doesn't proceed and return bad request. So let us do the same scenario. So here you can see customer item passing 0. So customer ID 0, items is this one. So customer ID 0 means what? It is going to be bad request. If you come to here, now when the customer ID is a 0 or negative number, it is going to return me this one. So it is throwing an argument null exception, and the argument null exception internally going to return me bad request. So now you can see what I'm doing here. Create order async method. When it is being invoked, what exception the service is going to return, it will return argument exception, and that argument exception is going to be replaced with the not found error page. I mean not found result. Finally, I invoke the controller class method. I check the request object type, sorry, response object type, and then I check the status code, then check the value, what type of value it is returned, message, and how many times the create order async method is being invoked. Clear? Now test this test case. Okay, it is success. Now test this one also. It is success. Again test this one. This time this one. Okay, so all the test cases are success. Clear?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Now insufficient stock, again, this is also going to return me same argument exception. So this time what I'm returning, I mean the logic is going to be same. Only difference is insufficient exception. I'm throwing from the service class and controller will convert that into same error responsibility, same bad request, right? So that logic is going to be same. Unexpected exception returns 500 internal server error. Suppose while executing the application, it is returning some error message, right? Some unexpected error. In that case, you can see it is going to return this 500. And what is the return type? See, in this case, bad result. Here bad result. Here not found. Here created error. But here what exactly it is returning? Status code. Now, if you go to the definition of this method, you will see it is returning actually object result. Object result means it can return any type. So that's what we need to understand. And the rest of the thing is going to be same. So here you can see created a async method. When invoking, it is invoking the exception object, right? Throwing an exception. And what is that exception? SQL Server connect. Any message you can find, figure out. So when there is no if there is a unhandled exception, so whatever the exception we throw here, that is not handled by this one, that is not handled by this one, not handled by this one. So finally, this catch block is going to handle that exception, and it is going to return this internal server error, and the return type is going to be status. I mean that method is status code, and the return type of this method is object result. So that's what we need to check. So the result type is going to be object result. It's the status code should be internal server. The value is going to be error response. Message you can check. You can also check that it should not contain a SQL server. This is important. Why? Now, whatever the actual message is being returned, we are not returning that actual message to the client. So here, what I'm returning an unexpected error occur. So that's what I'm verifying, and doesn't contain the actual exception detail. For example, this is the actual exception detail. So that should not be returned to the client. And verify this method is being invoked only once. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Clear. So existing order return 200. Okay. So if the order exists, then it should return me 200 status code. So you can see in order control, apart from this, we have any scenario we missed. So we check the success scenario. We check not found. We check bad request. We check internal server error. Right, all the scenarios we have tested. Now, what I need to do next? Next, we need to check the get by order. If the order found, it will return 200 success code. If it is not, if the order not found, it should return not found error response detail. If the data ID, if it is a zero or negative number, it should return argument exception or unhandled. Any unhandled error means it should return me 500 internal. So one unit test we need to write for handling 500, one unit test for the bad request, one unit test for the success, and one unit test for the not found. So these are the scenario that what we need to test. So let's start with the positive scenario. So order right this one existing order. So this is what we need to return. So this is the existing order that what we need to return when the service when the controller invoke this service class get order by IT method. So here you can see when it receives 10, then it will return this existing order. So calling the controller action method. I'm checking the result type as okay object result status code should be 200 value should be order response DTO and it should existing order and return order should be same. So whatever the existing order and whatever the return order, they must be same. If you want to check some values order ID order amount, you can also verify. This is the success scenario. If you want to test this one, you can also test. So right click, run test. Clear? Which one? This one. Clear, guys? Now, next, missing order return 404 not found. If the order doesn't exist, then what it should return? It should return 404 not found. You can also return no content. It's basically depend on your requirement. So this is 999 order ID. Order by ID async I'm passing, and here I'm returning null. So according to null, it should return not found object, and remaining thing you can check status code, value type, message, how many times the method is being invoked. Remaining things are going to be the same. Invalid order ID returns 400 bad requests. Suppose you are passing a invalid order ID. In that case, what exactly it will return? So what scenario we test this one? Not found. Not found means when order doesn't exist. But if the order ID is itself invalid, I mean negative, argument exception means it should return me bad result. So let us try to same thing. So here I'm sending a red argument exception, and here you can see bad result object it is returning error response station. Remaining thing is going to be same thing. Are you guys getting? I'm going little faster, but that should not be an issue. Whatever the logic we have written, now I'm not explaining what is this. What exactly this? Can anybody tell me? How many times this test is going to be run?
3 times.
3 times. So that's what you should know. And this logic is clear to everyone. Why I'm using throw async, not return async? Is that clear?
Yes.
And how to test the right, how to get the result type, how to get the what is the response type, and how to check the message, and how many times that method is being invoked. So all these things should be very clear to everyone. Now what I need to do next bad request we have checked. Yeah. So unexpected retrieval return 500 internal. Suppose while executing the action method, if there is some issue occur, some error occurred, then it should throw an exception. For example, database connectivity issue. Then in that case, it will return 500 internal server error. Here you can see sensitive internal database error. Any custom message I'm returning, and here I'm checking object result. Why? Because 500 means it is going to be object result. Why? Because in that case, controller will return status code, and status code return type is going to be object result. You can see. Now, the remaining thing is going to be same. Clear?
So
Now,
you have
let
checked
me
the
take.
object result also, sir.
Sorry?
You have checked the object result also. You can specify that 500 result, that is okay, no? I have equal to status
I'm
code.
not clearly understanding your query.
So, sir, we have to check object result also, or it is sufficient to check only internal server error.
Sir, you have to understand the return type is a right? Return type is object result. So this method is returning object result. And as part object result, what are the data you are returning? You are returning status code. You are returning error response object, right? I mean, this is, see, if I'm creating an object, that object can contain another object or not,
Yes, sir.
right? So in this case, that actual object it is returning is what? Object result. This method, status code is returning object result. From the object result, one of the property which contains status code, another right property called value which is going to contain this error response TTO. That what we are accessing here. So here you can see that result property is going to contain me, give me the object result, actual type. From the actual type, you can get the status code. From the actual type, you can get the value, right? And from the value, you can get the error response. Why? Because the value is error response DTO. And from this, there is a property called message. That what you can access from the value. Clear?
Okay. Okay, sir.
Now, let us try to run all the tests and see whether every test till now, whatever we created is working as expected or not. From the controller class, from the service class, every test. Clear, every test is that means my application code is fine, working as expected. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
how to unit test controller without creating the without running your application, without sending a actual HTTP request, without executing the actual service class logic. How you can unit test a controller? Is that clear? So it's very simple. What you need to do, you just need to create a test class. You just need to create the mock representation of the external dependencies which is required by the controller class, and then just invoke the respective method by passing the data what it needs, and then verify the response. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So the final thing what we are going to discuss, how to test the repositories. So this is very little bit different than what we have discussed so far. Now, so what we have discussed, right? We have discussed how to unit test controller, how to unit test services, all these things. Now what we are going to, so I'm not discussing what are repositories. I know you guys know what is repositories, how repositories work in, right, ASP.NET Core web application. This architecture should be clear to everybody because this is belongs to your .NET application, right? Client will make a request to controller, controller will pass that invoke the service layer will invoke the repository layer will make use of an entity framework core to work with the actual database. This is the layered architecture we generally follow, and that is what we follow in our application. This architecture we completely follow in our project. Now, what we need to understand, we need to understand how we can implement exactly repository. How to implement unit test for the repositories. And guys, remember, in this case, when I'm testing this order controller, I'm creating the mock representation of this one and this one. Similarly, when I'm testing this order service class, I am creating the mock representation of the repositories. Now, if you go to the product repository, customer repository, or order repository, let's assume the customer repository. How I can mock this one? So, do I need to create a mock representation of this DB context? Yes or no?
Yes.
But
Yes.
how you can do this? So if you are creating a mock representation of this DB context, it will not work, right? So what exactly we need to do? We need to create, right? Not a mock representation, exactly not a mock representation of a DB context. We exactly need a different database. We exactly need a different database. For example, currently my database is here, my orders DB, all the original data is there. So instead of using that original database, what I exactly need, I need a mock database. And within that mock database, what I need to do, I need to execute this logic. So at the end, what we need? At the end, we need to execute whatever the LinQ queries, whatever the TSQL statement, whatever the logic we have written within our order repository or product repository or right, whatever the repository. So for example, this is the logic we have written. So if I create a mock order repository, how I can verify this logic? So basically, what when we are implementing the unit test for order service, we check this logic whether it is working as expected or not. When we create the unit test for controller, we check this logic whether this logic is working as expected or not. Yes, at that time, whatever all other external dependencies, we create mock object for them. But order repository unit testing means what? Means we need to verify whatever the logic we have written here, whether this logic is working as expected or not. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
That means what? That means we are not going to create any mock representation of an order repository. Now tell me, in this case, what exactly this DP context represent? This DP context represent the communication link between our external database with the entity framework code. So here we are using DB context means what? We are using an entity framework code. And using this DB context, we are using this thing. Now, guys, tell me. So in this case, which database to be used, how to use that information, who provided to this order repository and when. How the entity framework core came to know that I'm going to work with a SQL Server database. So does this information we configured anywhere?
Application settings, that's it.
Yes. Now if you go to the program.cs class file, here we configure this is my application DB context, and this application DB context is going to make use of SQL Server database, that the connection string is coming from here. Clear? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
So now when we are going to do the unit testing for repository, see, now this program class will come into the picture, this connection string will come into the picture when we run this order management API. If I'm not running this order management API, that means what? That means this program class will not come into the picture. The connection string also will not come into the picture. Is that clear? Is that very clear?
So,
Yes.
Right. So that means what? That means, so now if the program class will not come into the picture, then that means what? This application DB context configuration to use SQL database and the connection string will not be provided to this order repository class, DB context will not provided to this product class DB context. I mean to this application DB context. So what exactly we need to do? So exactly we need to create a separate database. You can create a database in a SQL Server, that is fine. But what is the best approach? Create one in-memory database, which is going to be created once your test start, and is going to be destroyed once your test completed. And that database is going to be used by this context. And once that, and again, all the logic, whatever you created, right within the repository, they are going to be executed inside that database only. Clear? So basically, we need to create in-memory database. If this is not clear at the moment, don't worry. We are going to discuss these things. So first of all, what we need to do, install this package. This package will provide us the support, create in-memory database. And that in-memory database is very much similar to our SQL Server database, what we created. But what is the difference? This is in memory. In memory means as long as your test start, database is there for each test, right? And once the test completed, that database is also going to be completed. Sorry, this is the wrong place, right? Where we execute, this should not be the place. It should be executed inside the test project. Clear? So first of all, we need to install this package. Why? Now this package will provide the support for creating in-memory database in our test project. Next, what I need to do, I need to create one folder called repositories. Right? I need to create one folder called repositories. So go ahead within your test project, add a folder. Repositories, right? Now, within this repositories folder, first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add, right. Before that, what I need to do, I need to create actually a helper method folder. Okay, let me create one more folder called helper. Okay, so do one more thing. So let me remove this tab just above. Mark this is the step to create a helper method. This will be step 3. Okay, fine. So first of all, I need to create a helper folder. What is the use of this helper folder? It is going to create the database, in-memory database. So instead of creating and executing the same logic again and again inside each test method, we can create a separate helper class, and that helper class is going to be used by the test method to create the database. So let us try to observe. So DB context helper, you can see this is a static class and this is a static method, and this static method, right, is going to check something. What is that method is going to do? First of all, You can see it is a it accepts one parameter, optional parameter, that is database name. While I'm calling this method, if I pass a name, that name will be the database name. If I'm not passing anything, then a new database, it is automatically generated, right? And again, you can see this option class I'm creating. So exactly, if you come to the right repository, what exactly application DB context? So this is nothing but a DB context option. So this application DB context exactly expect one parameter of which type? DB context option, right? Using that DB context option, it can configure, right? So now what I need to do, I need to do the same thing. First of all, DB context option builder instance I need to create, right? And while creating the DB context option builder instance, I need to specify my context object. I also need to specify what type of a database, whether you are using SQL Server, whether you are using MySQL, whether you are using in-memory database. So I'm using in-memory database. And in this case, I'm using a ternary operator. If database name is provided, not a ternary operator, null collecting operator. If database name is not null, that will be used as the name. If it is null, then a new value it is going to be generated. And this will create me this will create the option builder. And what is the use of option builder? All right, again, if you look at the order repository, it is expecting the DB context, right? And that DB context is already contains the option builder. Exactly. If you want to understand this very clearly in the program class, what we are doing here, you can see this is nothing but your DB context option builder. So for this application DB context, we are configuring the DB context option builder. Sir, what is the use of a DB context option builder? Using the DB context option builder, we can configure, we can build what type of a database the entity framework core is going to communicate with. For that particular database, what is the connection string? Those configurations we can provide using DB context option builder. And the same thing I'm doing here. First of all, I'm creating the DB context option builder and I'm telling that please use a in-memory database, and for the in-memory database, no credential is required, right? And finally, I'm passing that option object to the DB context. Clear? So basically from here, what exactly it is going to return? It is going to return one application DB context, which contains the information to create a database in memory. And database name, it can be auto-generated if you do not provide a ready database. And finally, that DB context option, it is passing to the application DB context instance. Now, if you go to the implementation, so this application DB context is there, which is going to contain this option object. Clear? And whatever the DB context option object you provided, it will use that particular database. If you provided the SQL Server, then it will use that particular database. If you provide in-memory DB context option, I mean that application DB context, if it is in-memory, then it will use that in-memory database. So in this case, it is going to use the in-memory database. So it is a static helper class that creates the application DB context instance configured with the entity framework or in-memory provider. Clear, guys? Anyone having any question? Why we are creating this in-memory data? Because we don't want to use our actual database. So now what I need to do? I need to perform the unit test for 3 repositories. What are the repositories? Customer, order, and the product. So what I need to do within the repositories folder, I need to create 3 class files. One is product repository, another one is customer repository, another one is order repository. Let me create the class file one by one. So each class for each repository. So first one is product repository. Second one is customer repository. And the third one is order repository. So 3 classes I have created within the repositories folder. Why 3 classes? Because we are going to test 3 repositories. For each repository, I'm going to create a task. Now, so for each repository, what I need to do, I need to add these namespaces. For each repository, please add these namespaces also make the class public. Okay, that's fine. Now, what I need to do next? Next, I need to test the product repository. If you go to the product repository, in product repository, we are having one method get by ID async method. So basically, it will expect the ID, and based on the ID, it is going to return the data. So now, what I need to do? I need to create a unit test which is going to check the existing product. If the existing product means I will pass one ID and it will return me the existing product details. So let me go ahead and test this one. So product repository, the first method I'm going to test. See, let us try to observe. First of all, I need to create the context object because the context object means what? It is going to communicate with the entity framework code. So for this purpose, I need to create first of all the database. So in this case, create a new application database. The context automatically dispose, right, guys? Remember, this context is automatically disposed when the test method finishes its execution. So context object is there. I'm creating a product and I'm adding that product to the context. See, guys, remember, while this statement is executed, it is going to create a new database. And that database is going to be created with what structure, whatever you defined within your application DB context, but no data. Clear? So once this created DB context complete executes, it will return the application DB context and it will create a database. And that database is going to contain what information, whatever you provided here. Clear?
Yes, sir.
But what I need to do, I need to test right everything manual. So once you have the context object, database is created, you got the context object, and using that context object, you add a product to the products table. So context.products.add. Then you call the step changes method. So once you call the step changes method, that product at this point that entity state is added, not pushed to the database. When you call the step changes method, that entity right stored inside the database, right? Then what you are going to do now, finally what I'm passing now, whatever the context object I created, this is my context object which currently contain how many products? Guys, tell me how many products?
One.
One product, right? And then what I'm doing here, I'm creating the product repository and passing my context object, right? I'm creating the product repository, you can see, by passing the context object. Now I'm calling this get by ID method. So once I call this get by ID method, then whatever the logic is written here, that logic is going to execute or not?
Mhm.
But this time it will execute the logic inside our SQL Server database or in-memory database, which that unit test method created.
In memory.
Clear? Once the execution completed, you can verify result should not be null, ID should value this one, name is this one, price is this one, stock is this one, description is this one. Whatever the data you store, you can verify whether you are getting such data or not. Right? For example, let me test this method. This is completed successfully. Clear?
Sir, here how the table will be created while when you're passing the data automatically will create or only data will be stored in that memory?
I'm actually not getting what you are actually asking. Can anybody elaborate what he's trying to ask?
We are defining the data for the products, you know, sir.
Let me enable the chat window. Please put your question there because I'm unable to.
Okay.
Database name.
Sorry?
No, sir. Can you go up, sir? Can you go up? Where we define the data for the product. Yeah. So what my question is, we have created a database here. So
Yes,
for this product, it will be created that table or directly it will going to store the data. That's my question. Yeah.
still I'm not understanding your query. Can anyone else explain me what exactly it's trying to ask me? Because his voice is not clearly audible to me. Can anyone else? I don't know what exactly it's trying to ask.
Which database use?
So you just tell me which database is used. So that's what I have already explained. If you go to the create DB context method helper class, then what we have provided. If we do not provided the database name, then what should be the name? What is this statement meaning?
Blank.
Are you mad? How it is going to
Uh,
blank GUID?
New. Yeah.
It will generate a unique
Random.
value, right?
Yes.
That is
Random.
going to be
Yes.
the name of the database. If we
Yes.
provided, then that will be the database name. If you not provided, then this is randomly it will give a name to
Random
our
value.
data, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
as long as this test is running, right, that the database exists. Once the test completed, that the database is going to be deleted automatically in memory database. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so missing product return now. So let us try to observe this one. So in this case, if I'm providing a product repository, if I'm providing ID which is not exist in the database, then it should return me null. So that's what I need to test, right? So let's proceed and do this thing. So here I'm providing creating the database with exactly with a unique name, and I'm not adding any product to the database. So I mean what database exists, tables are exist, but in the products table there is no data. And I'm creating the repository. I'm specifying the missing product ID. Any value you provided doesn't matter. Why? Because the table is empty. And here I'm passing this method, and this time it should return me null. That's what I'm checking. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And now, what I need to do, I need to write a unit test for the customer repository. Like product repository, customer repository is also going to do the same thing. So here you can see customer repository. I'm passing the customer ID, and it is returning me the customer data. So that's what I need to test. So for this purpose, what I need to do, first of all, existing customer is written. If the customer exists, then it should return. Again, if the customer not exist, then it should return not. So that's what we need to test. Same thing, creating the DB context, no name provided. I'm creating the customer object. I'm passing that, I'm adding that customer into the tables, calling this changes so that data will be available in the table. And write a context data change tracker data clear. I'm calling this one to ensure if data, if any TP context execute, right, then the data should query from the database, not from the change tracker. See, does anyone understand? Can anybody explain me what is change tracking? Can anybody explain me what is change tracking? Okay, okay, let it be there. Right? If you don't know, then if you are not asking me what is change tracking, then why should I explain?
It's track the state of the.
Change tracking means it is track the object. But what is the use of a change tracking? If interviewer asks you what is change tracking, if you answer it will track the right object, then what you will write? This is not the exact expectations, right?
When the I mean the object has been added or removed, any record has been added or removed, that will be tracked.
That will be tracked. That will be tracked definitely. But for this particular context, why I'm using change tracking means what? For example, if you look at this order repository. So here I'm executing this statement, right? Here I'm executing this statement. For example, And I execute, for example, if you go to the product repository, this statement is execute. So when this statement is executed, it will, first of all, right, how the things are going to be happening in behind the scene. If I'm executing this statement, then what happens first? First, what happens? First of all, it will check whatever the product ID I'm passing, whether that product is already available in the context object or not. So first time it will check, yes, this product is not available. Then what it will do? It will execute the SQL statement and get the data from the database. And once it gets the data from the database, if you are not using as no tracking, then it will track that object, and that data, that object is already available within the context object. As long as the context is not clear, again, if you try to access the same ID, then what will happen? Now this time it will figure out whether this product is available within the context object. Yes, it is available. Okay, let me return from the context object instead of fetching and querying the database. The first level of caching provided by Entity Framework Core, and that is the reason why I'm using here, right? What change tracker data clear. So basically, what happened now when I'm adding this context, when I'm adding this object to the customer division property within the context object. So, and I'm calling this changes method means that is stored in the database, but that object is already available in the context object. And later a point of time, if I'm trying to fetch that particular customer, then it will return the data from the context object, not from the database. And to forcefully, and if my intention not to check the data from the context object, but I want the repository to check the data from the database, I need to clear the context. So once you clear, means now the context object doesn't hold this data anymore. So now if you try to access the data, it will fetch the data from the database. That is the reason why I'm calling this context dot change tracker dot clear. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm creating the customer repository object, and then I'm calling this get by ID method. So if I have not cleared this one, then this repository using the same context object. So this context object I'm passing to the repository, and the same context object is going to be used by this one. So this object is already in the context, so it will not execute any SQL statement. That is the reason why I have cleared this. Now, if the product is available, it will return, and right, first of all, it should not be null. Whatever the validation data you want to check, you can check. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now next what I need to do, I need to check the not null condition. So if the, sorry, null condition, if the customer doesn't exist, again, I'm creating the database, no data inserted, creating the repository instance by passing the context object, and this is the missing customer ID. So I'm calling this method, and this should return me now. Clear? Now you can test this endpoint, run test. And it is completed. And now you can also run this one to test whether the return null is working or it is also working. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right. Now, in get by ID method, right, in order repository, if you go to the order repository, we have two methods. Right, in customer, we have discussed the customer repository, we have discussed the product repository, and in order repository. This is add async method. This is get by ID async method. These are the two methods available in the order repository. Let us write the unit test. Right, creating reusable order test data. First of all, some multiple time we need to create the order data. So for saving time, what I'm doing actually, I'm creating this test data. This is my order repository test. So this is my test data. So please observe. So what I'm doing, I'm creating my context objects. Again, at this time, what you can see, I'm passing that context. I mean, this is the database name, whatever the name provided to this method, it will use the same name to create the database. Previous two example, what we have discussed, we have not provided the name so that a GUID will be used as the database name. But this time, we are expecting the caller of this method to provide the name of the database, and accordingly it will create the database. It create one customer name, Pranay ID, this one product name laptop, another product with ID 402, and then it is creating one order object. You can say ID, customer name, some base amount or total order, whatever the name, and then you can see it is passing that order object right into this order deficit property, and finally it is calling the set changes method. So now, can anybody tell me at this point time how many right object we have created? One customer object, one laptop, one mouse, one order. And here I'm passing this order object to this orders division property. So when I call the step changes method, then what are the data to be inserted? I mean, does it going to insert the data into the customers table? Does it going to insert the data into the products table? Does it going to insert the data into the orders table? Yes or no? First of all, tell me which table will get data. Only order table or all the tables? If yes, why? If no, why?
The tables.
Yes, sir. Is it going to insert data to all the table? I've already given the explanation. Please read this one and you will get all the information. All the table will get the data because of the entity graph. Entity graph means what? Now, if you look at the order entity, it is containing the list of order items, right? You can see. And this order items and this customer ID, right? You can see this customer. So I'm passing that customer object itself or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
And this order items, this is a collection property or not?
Yes.
And here in the product table, this is related to product entity or not? That means as these entities are related within navigational properties. So because of the entity graph, all the tables are going to get populated. Right? So basically here what exactly it is creating, it is inserting the customer data, the product information and the order along with the order items. So this is going to contain the text data. Now, existing order is written. So basically if the order exists, right, then it should return the data. That test we need to create. So order repository test. Now, okay. Now please observe. So first of all, database name. You can give any name. I'm also using this database name approach. I'm passing that. It will create the database. It will populate the database with the test data. Means what? At this point, database along with the customer product order and order items are populated. And that database name, right? Again, right? What I'm doing here, please observe. So this is what it is going to generate a database. But now using the same database, what I'm doing, please observe, I'm creating a context object. Getting my point? Using the same database, whatever the name I provided here to generate and populate the database, and here create a separate context connecting to the database containing the seed data. So at this point, I'm providing the database name. You can go ahead and again, you can see we have provided the database. So that the database is already available. Guys, remember, if the database is already available, it will not create a database, new database. It will execute the database. If it will available, it will use that same database. Not available, it will create the database. At this time, we have already created the database and seeded the data. So here, it will use that same database and create the context object. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this
Yes.
time, this this particular statement will create the database and populate the database in memory database with the seeded data. And this will use the existing database. Why? Because this name I have provided here and the same name. And at this time, database is already created. So it will use that database to create the context object. Now that context object I'm passing to my order repository and calling this get by ID method. And whatever the data it return, that's what I can verify: result, ID, customer ID, base amount, discount amount, total amount, whatever right verification you want to do, you can do it. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next, missing order should return null. Let me test this one. Missing order should return null. So in this case, again, you can see I'm creating a new database. Guys, remember, every test, it is going to generate a new database. Test completed, database deleted. So here you can see I'm creating a context object, passing that context object to the repository. Calling this method means it will return null, and that's what I have verified. It's very simple, and we have already created the same multiple times. Related customer is loaded. So basically what I need to do, I need to check whenever I'm fetching the right order, that the customer information should also loaded. So if you go to this one, so while I'm loading the order information, customer information, order items information, order item plus product information, everything should be loaded. So first test what I'm doing here, I'm checking whether the customer data it is loading or not. First of all, I'm creating the database, passing to this method so that the customer, order, item, product, everything get generated. Then I'm creating the context object with the same name, passing that context object here, calling this get by IT method. So once I call, right, I'm sure it should load the related customer. So I'm checking whether the result at customer null or not null, whether that customer ID is this value, customer name, customer email. I mean, whatever we provided in the seeded, whether the same data it is returning or not. So if you come here, whatever the name ID 301, name this one, and email. The same thing I'm checking here. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So order item and products are
Yes.
loaded. The related order items and the products are loaded or not. That's what also you can verify, right? For example, you can see I'm using the same approach, creating the context, passing to this repository, calling this method. So here result.order items.count should be 2 and laptop product. So assert.single. So basically based on this product ID, it should contain a single product and that product information you can fetch. And similarly, if other products are there, you can also verify. So assert.single means what? So this is going to be a collection, and from this collection, based on the condition, it will return a single item. And I'm sure 401 is for the laptop item. So that's what we have also, you can also confirm here. So laptop item ID is 401. So this is how you can write unit test or repositories. Now you can also verify. Now you can also test all these methods. So order repository, right click, run. See, all the test cases are fast. This is how you can write a unit test for your repository. So we have successfully write a unit test for the controllers, for services, as well as for repositories. So with this, our unit testing is completed. Clear?
Yes.
Yes. So from Monday, we are going to start Angular. Angular with the web API.
Okay, sir.
And those who have, and those sessions are not free for everyone. Those who enroll for full stack wise, they will get access. Anyone having any question, they can ask. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.